Welcome to another exciting episode of Bats, Balls and Banter, your ultimate destination for all things cricket. Cricket is more than just a game, it's a passion that unites millions across the globe. Here at Bats, Balls and Banter, we're dedicated to bringing you closer to the action, the stories and the personalities that make cricket the fascinating sport that it is. I'm your host, Kevin Pattenden. Grab your bat, hold on to your balls, settle in, and let's dive into the banter. So on today's episode of Bats, Balls and Banter, we're thrilled to welcome Richard Cox, a figure whose influence on cricket spans coaching, administration and international development. Richard, who has played minor counties for Hertfordshire and gone on to hold key roles including the CEO of the Royal Dutch Cricket Board and regional manager for the ECB. His work has shaped cricket not only in England but in places as diverse as the Netherlands, Estonia and Cyprus. Currently serving as General Manager of Hertfordshire Cricket, High Performance Director for the Estonian Cricket Board and involved in various global cricketing initiatives, Richard's insights and experiences are sure to offer unique perspective on the game we love. So just before the break, we were talking about all those experiences that you'd had, and especially the ones from the Netherlands, and bringing it back to the UK, and how did you approach that when you got back? And then we went on to the Blind Summit coaching initiative, and I now know why it's called Blind Summit, which is a really good analogy, really, that you gave us to that. And then just before the break, we finished on to on your role in leading Hertfordshire Cricket. So I understand then that in, I don't know, about 2022, you took that role of lead officer for Hertfordshire Cricket. Given all your experiences before, given some of the how can I word it, nightmares that you'd sort of entered into and managed to work really well and straighten them out and put them on a good path, did you set yourself any goals when you took that role? And if you did, what progress have you made against them?
Yeah, we did set some goals, and here comes the thread again of as soon as I was interim to start with.
Don't tell me they had financial difficulties.
Well, yeah, they did. Actually. They weren't too bad, but they were watchful, shall we say? But the current lead officer was coming up to retirement, and I think they'd had a knock on the door from ECB to say, "Listen, you're not the biggest county in the world. Where do you see your future?" And I think the word amalgamation had come up in the conversation. Well, you'll know more than anybody the proud nature of the heritage of English cricket and the bat. And there were a few people who were sort of, well, you know, that would be the final nail in the coffin and over my dead body, and that has to be the last thing that we do. So I went down to meet them and said, "Listen, let's have a look at this for 6 months." They said, "Well, we've got a few problems." I said, "What's that?" "Well, we've got a few audits coming up." So I said, "Well, okay, well, like what?" Well, we've got a safeguarding audit, a chance to shine audit, which is a state schools programme. We've got a national counties audit coming up. We'd no doubt have a visit from ECB. The list went on and on and on. I thought, right, okay. Well, they're not audits I haven't been through before. I'm sure as long as we've got the paperwork in place, we can, you know, get through this. So I think it would be fair to say that there were a few areas in the business that were off the pace. And it took me 5 months, really, to set out a plan to review the organisation. So the goal question that you asked was, they did a strategic review with an external chair of Shropshire Cricket, actually, Adrian Collins, who was brilliant, covered everything. And we, again, restructured and changed internally the way we do things to become a lot more club-facing. We'd become quite performance-facing, so county age group cricket, you know, the men's senior national counties team. It was all about, you know, wearing the kit, as I call it, whereas the priorities weren't that necessarily around our clubs, around coaching, competitions, growing the national programmes. The women's game, which of course has escalated immensely. We needed to get better at cricket in schools. We needed to be better at compliance. And we were reliant really on ECB's funding. So my vision, I suppose, or goal was if we change the way we look at things, then the things we look at change. And we needed to, and we did, reframe things to make the art of the possible. We're still working on that to this day. And I know that, you had Martin Dobson on a couple of weeks ago. He describes all this stuff far, far better than I do about all the intricacies of working alongside ECB. So please do listen to him if you want detailed knowledge of running a county, because he's very, very good at running Lincolnshire.
Yes, he does a very good job, definitely.
Yeah, he does. But the mindset, Kev, was the biggest thing that I wanted to try and change around a small county. And as I just said, if we change the way we look at things, then the things we look at change.
Yeah, and I think
that's what we're doing.
If you've got this starting point of a document, again, where I think over the years things have changed is you have a document that's ever evolving now. I think, when I go back many times, this was the policy for this was the process for that. It didn't matter what was happening, but this was the policy or this was the process. And just from spreading my wings with different people and different cultures and different organisations, going back to I think you become wiser if you do those sort of things than stick in the same place. I think, would I be right in saying your document that you refer to there is also ever-changing, being updated, modernised, whatever the phrase is? But
yeah, as Martin said on his podcast, the other week, we're coming to the end of a fairly significant cycle with ECB where our funding changes on the 1st of February 2025 for the good, I have to say, in most counties.
Good.
But it's also making sure that every penny counts and ensuring that you are investable as a county when other monetary opportunities come along and you want to grow the game. So all counties at the moment, the 20 national counties and the 18 first-class counties, are head down at the moment working through a new strategy and plan. Some adjustments, not massive changes in the tactics of the way we approach things, ready for the next 4-year cycle. And that interim strategy that Adrian Collins, I mentioned earlier, will help shape our future. So we don't have to do a lot of work because we've already had a mid-term review, if you like.
Yeah. So the balance is
but we are all head down at the moment in the books.
So would you say then over the time, I hear lots of people, and I'm not a big football follower. I say that supporting Sheffield Wednesday, so therefore there's probably why I'm not a big football fan. But lots of people, especially at the top level of football these days, say it's not a sport anymore, it's a business. It's all about making the sport elements gone. I think that's the older generation, personally, that I hear that people comment to me. And there's an element of truth to it. These investors are coming not just because they like Arsenal or Man United or whatever the team is. It's because they're thinking, right, we can make money. It's a business. Is that coming more and more into cricket over the years, would you say?
I think cricket's been a business for a long, long time. I don't think it's new necessarily. When I look back, through those years that we've discussed, there was definitely various points in time where it changed. 1997 being the most significant business change, the advent of Sky TV being a first significant change, the global rights to the TV market, which allowed sizable amounts of money, thanks to India's broadcasting rights, to come into the game. As soon as you start to factor those in, then inevitably you're in a very, very different world. The trick is to maintain your cricketing forefront and not to lose sight of what you're going to work for every day. And that is a real challenge for a lot of counties at the moment who are looking to grow their business, but in an entirely different way than they perhaps have in the past, either through those commercial opportunities or by turning themselves into trusts, charities and foundations, and finding that they've lost their identity, but they've gained surfeits of cash. whilst the agenda, the social and health agenda, has changed, and it's right that it's changed, and it does need investing in, but keeping that balance of cricket on the other side of the coin and knowing what you stand for is equally important.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key point that you mentioned. The only thing, you talk about the Sky TV and the change and T20 coming in and et cetera, I think, because if you just relied on the old format of the county game where one man and his dog goes, in fact, I'm not even sure. Is there a charge anymore to go and watch a county game? I'm not quite sure.
There is. I saw something the other day where it was something like £25 to go and watch a championship game at one of the counties. Yeah. But
I would have thought that's losing them money. I would have thought it's a loss leader because the games, the ones I see, but they've got bigger improvement in other elements now, as I say, the T20. And what I'm going to lead on to is, the new approach in Test cricket from England. And it may seem this a bizarre away from what we're just talking about, but what I'm trying to link there is how important is the visible cricket to the cricket lovers. So your Bazball, as it's so called, your T20, your 100, your IPL. Does all that have a huge impact on minor counties cricket, for example?
Oh, massive. It's an unbelievable difference how this world has changed. Minor counties have, a couple of 3 years ago, changed their name to national counties because minor in itself tells you everything, doesn't it? And yet many of those counties were the perpetrators of some of the superstars of the game, our current England captain being one of them, for an example, as a Cumbrian lad, without the Cumbrian pathway that he came through.
Yeah.
So it has unbelievable status, and the game's got shorter, Kev. It's got more explosive, more pressurised. 50 over cricket. What's the future for that? The jury is out. I think the next 12, 18 months, 2 years, it would be really interesting to see what happens with that. T20 and obviously T10 and the 100 has come in, which is a current hot potato in this country with regard to the sale of the rights.
So that's this year. That's for next season, isn't it? Now they've opened that up to franchise cricket.
And if you compare national minor counties cricket, when I played, we played 2-day cricket. That was it. Yeah. We didn't play anything else. Now the boys play T20 cricket, they play 50 over cricket, and they have 3-day cricket as well. So skill execution has changed in that period of time. And that's critical. I think we've obviously become better fielders and batters, and I think more latterly we're becoming better bowlers as well as the game's changed. What else? Data analysis is off the scale.
Yeah.
On every player, every venue, and now very much part of the game. Allied to that, I suppose, live coverage. There is. Very, very rarely now you can't find a game somewhere on a live stream. And ICC and European Cricket Network together have transitioned that in Europe in particular, with similar coverage here in the UK. You see an ECB Premier League game advertised in the Notts Premier League or whatever. You can probably sat at home every Saturday afternoon. And
through the Play Cricket portal, you can watch most.
It's revolutionised, and that has come from increased investment from around the world. And I suppose the last thing I'd say, and probably the most steepest curve, is the women's game. So the 100 in particular has been a massive catalyst for the delivery of the game, playing matches on the same day at the same venue, and has helped enormously with the professionalisation of the women's game in the UK. And I don't think it will be long before, at the moment a women's game's played first almost as the warm-up act, and then the men's game comes on either under lights or later in the afternoon. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if we don't see that switched very soon, such that the women's game takes precedent as the go-to fixture, because spectatorship is excellent.
Yeah, I think that's a real valid point in the basis that I was going to say. When the 100 first came out, I felt, and I went to a couple of games at Trent Bridge, as you would imagine, when it first came out, there was lots of free ticket, getting you going, and tickets for a £5. It did a great way of selling the game. I'm not let's not go into it, but I'm not quite sure it's the future. But anyway, the 100, it is what it is. But we went and we said, oh, well, the ladies are on first, let's go and what. But the reality is, this is going back, when did it start? 3 years ago, whatever. It was pretty poor. And you could see why it was a warm-up act. However, that said, 3 years later, so somebody knew something that I clearly didn't, because I wouldn't have bothered again. Now, I am more than happy to go and watch, at that level, a ladies' game of cricket, whether there's a men's game after it or not. Because it's just improved. And as you probably know, we have a Cricket Finder, a sponsor of the podcast here, that we have an ambassador in Maddie Ward, and being involved with Maddie and seeing how she's progressing, and she just had a short contract there with the Northern Diamonds and left Notts for after a while, because her dad's pathway coach, as you probably know, Tim Ward there at Notts. And just seeing how ladies cricket, the professionalism, the more equality on pay, I think is real key in driving it forward. And we've seen it, I got to know you through some of your emerging nation stuff, which we've seen also developing the ladies game, and the European Cricket Network helping that massively. But leads me on to the emerging nations. We've just talked about how the Super Six, or the current, leading nations, so to speak, have had to improve. But cricket development now in emerging nations, and I know you've worked with, obviously, Estonia and Cyprus and probably some others I'm unaware of, but given all the funding or all the expertise or all the knowledge that you've got through cricket in developed nations, what is it like developing the sport in a non-traditional cricketing country, I suppose, and from that, what experiences do you learn that you can possibly feed back into traditional cricketing countries?
That's a good question. I suppose the first thing you've got to have is patience and the ability to adapt your style, because oftentimes you're working with people who might not have the knowledge that you would expect to have in a traditional cricket playing country, so you've got to be adaptable. Oftentimes those emerging nations have three key things, I think, which the UK and the big countries, Australia and India, all the big ones have, which is they often don't have the time to dedicate to their cricket. They certainly don't have the facilities and sometimes the knowledge. So, what have I learned is that you've got to have a clear plan, because you've got to be ultra efficient and you've got to know where you're going. And you've got to have the people in place. You've got to be able to work with small budgets, Kev, because there's not loads of money sloshing around in these countries. You've got to maximise every moment. I suppose when I look back at some of the countries I've worked with, and you're right, I've worked in quite a few. When I think back to 1992, I think I started with all of this stuff. With Gibraltar, where I was with 16 years.
Gibraltar, I did know, yeah.
Yeah, and you've got to understand that there's going to be a ceiling for improvement, and expect the unexpected along the way, and be able to bounce around that. But the ceiling for improvement can be immense, because the people's thirst for knowledge and information and input is perhaps incredible when you're working with an emerging nation, compared at home where it's all laid on and it's kind of expected.
Yeah, it's run of the mill because everybody knows about it. And I think, if we can break out of that a little bit, and yes, you're right, Gibraltar, I did know about that. Sorry, I forgot to mention it in Cyprus. But I got to know you predominantly through your, I'll say it because you won't, but your absolutely fantastic work at Estonian Cricket. And again, correct me where I'm wrong here, because I know I will be. But from in the 90s, in the rankings, to in the 60s, in a very short space of time, you must be absolutely thoroughly happy with, and that hopefully will continue to move forward. But how did you tailor your approach then, knowing that money is less, knowledge is less,
I suppose it's important when you're working with these countries to be prepared that the players change a lot. So not everybody's available all the time. So if I look back at the squad of 2022, and even just before that, when I became invited to help out a bit, you don't see the same now. I think there's only 2 names on the team sheet in the space of 3 years. So the game, you've got to keep repeating clear messages is the first thing. I think it's important to keep it simple. Absolutely critical to have fun and be enjoyable, have an enjoyable environment. I think it's important that the countries adapt with the game. So both Cyprus and Estonia, when T10 first came along, for instance, I think we all thought it was a bit of an opportunity to get some extra cricket, full stop. We've now realised how crucially important it is into the development of our players, and they're a massive building block. So I think you've got to be pretty skilled at managing up, across, down, and understand the culture, and spend time with the people as people. Not just as cricketers, because it's very easy to pop in and do a visit and be cricket, and actually you don't leave understanding or standing in their shoes. So spending time with people and understanding about their lives. Listen, I never got on a train and didn't know its destination, Kev. I may not have known all the stops on the way or how often they would be, but I knew where the end of the line was. And I think if you've got that kind of mentality, then you can get on the right train, and that's one of the things that I think both Estonia and Cyprus have managed to do, is be really clear about where we're going.
Yeah, I think that I
might not know what will happen on the way.
Yeah, and I like that analogy. You do generally know where you're going when you get on a train, and it may get delayed along the route. You're probably expecting it at a certain time, but things will happen that delay it also. But I suppose in these emerging nations where cultural differences, I suppose, just and the fact that again, talk about specifically Estonia, because I know some of that. Nothing against the other nations that you work with, but I don't know enough about it. The people who are playing cricket at the minute knew of cricket. There may be a small percentage who have got involved and got to know it, and we know of a couple of true out-and-out Estonians who probably didn't do it in the first instance, and that was through a working incentive originally. But I suppose the question is, where nobody in a country like Estonia knows cricket, like they know football or they know basketball because of its worldwide reach, even though cricket is available, as you rightly said earlier, on more platforms now than it's ever been available, but they just don't know of it. Is part of your role not only encouraging and growing to some degree the club structure, but also the international team? What involvement or input do you have for the likes of the development officer or the coaching plans or the kids that are coming through? There's a bigger picture, I would think, than just Cricket Estonia for you.
Yeah, there is. The high performance program is the bit that I lead on, and there's 3 segments to that. That's the men's team, which you've touched on. The women's team, although we've just had a bit of a structural change with Estonia Cricket, so I was more of an advisor on that over the last couple of years, wasn't intrinsically involved. That's just changed in the last month or so, where I will have a stronger role. And the third area is around coaching and coach development. So when I'm in country, as I call it, I will always spend some time during that weekend having a series of meetings with the hierarchy of Estonian cricket. That might be the chairman, the president, some of the board members, but definitely people like Dave Robson, who's the development officer, because he needs to know, the way I'm thinking and see PowerPoint presentations and what are we aiming for. And I'm very much part of the discussions that they have in between my visits. The world's a small place now, so we can interact pretty quickly. That said, I don't have any hands-on role with club cricket. That's left domestically to the board and to the office. But it's important that the flagship is really clear to people, because that's where everybody looks, whether we like it or not. Everybody looks at how your national team is doing, whatever sport you're in, whatever country you're in. And if Estonia's got a good pathway for its youngsters, then that's where they'll look, because that's where they want to go. If they're encouraged and see that as a successful, mature environment to be in, but more so happy and fun, then they'll soon join in, won't they? Whereas I think when I first started in Estonia, there were quite a number of people questioning, well, why do we do this? We just need to run a kids program. And we need to, and absolutely we do need to run a kids program, and they've been brilliant at that across the country through Dave and Ragnar doing that. Yeah. But those kids also need to be able to see the end of the train line.
Yeah, and again, you've got always, I think, got to have something to aspire to. And if you think all of a sudden you can represent your country, different countries have different views on representing your country, and different people have different views on representing your country. But from my perspective, I'm an Englishman through and through originally, and if I could have represented England and wore those 3 lions on my shirt, it would have made me immensely proud, because I'm representing my country. And so what I'm saying is, if these kids can also now come through and think, well, hang on a minute, not only actually is it fun, it's a good sport, I've got teammates, I'm growing my network, can also aspire to be representing my country, I think that's a huge driver, or it would have been for me, and hopefully still is for lots of people. But look, we're talking
it's an interesting point, actually, just on that and how important it is. So you're right to point out that 2 of the men's team that are homegrown and bred in Marco Vake and Kalle Vislapu. And oftentimes, Kev, in team meetings, although Kalle doesn't speak an awful lot, but when he does speak, you listen, Marco will always speak. I will always turn to the pair of them and say, what do you think? What is it we're missing? What is it we're doing well? What do you think? Because if it means a lot to the rest of that side that perhaps weren't born and bred, then it will mean 10 times to those. They will feel every victory 10 times more than everybody else, and they'll also feel every defeat.
You are listening to the podcast Bats, Balls and Banter. Please like, subscribe and share with your fellow enthusiasts. Hey, don't forget to leave a review, and your support keeps the banter going. So welcome back. We've just gone through lots of sort of international cricket, emerging nations, England, and we've talked about IPL and Test cricket, etc., etc., etc. But I suppose none of this really will ever be relevant unless we continue to nurture grassroots cricket, and personally I'd like to see that continue globally. I've just, as you probably are aware, I've just come back from Austria watching an under-17 tournament, which was really impressive, from different Czech Republic, Vienna, 2 UK teams, a team from Estonia. But what do you think are key factors then in continuing grassroots development, really, both locally and globally? Is there something that is really key that we continue to do?
Do you mean in emerging nations or in the UK? More in the LTC?
Sorry, Richard, for not explaining. Just grassroots cricket in general. I'd like to see this in the major 6 countries, your England, your Australia, India, New Zealand, etc., etc. Then, they've probably got plans, but I'd like to see emerging nations involved in grassroots cricket more. And so really across the board, what are the key factors in nurturing grassroots development?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think that the first thing is that most countries work to an ICC scorecard, and that scorecard tells you how you're doing. It's a database, as you can imagine, a dashboard, a portal of information of how much cricket is being played in your country, whether it's male, female, young or old. And on that is predicated ICC's ability to invest in you. So having good finance is pretty critical, really, as a key factor in nurturing grassroots cricket. You haven't got the money, you can't go very far, and then you've got to find the people. So making sure you've got good training and implementation programs is the next thing. And the ones that are successful at it, Kev, in my view, across Europe, and I've worked in a fair few of, I think there's 32 countries across Europe, and I've worked in over half of those, in one guise or another. Yeah, either as coaching or coach development or governance support. But I would say stability at board level and a clear, committed vision versus the chop and change that you sometimes see is the one that leads to extended growth. So those would be the big ticket items to start with, to make sure you've got a good base to go from. And then, down on the ground, the most important things I've seen are having schools programs that are in local languages, so that kids and teachers can quickly and easily deliver as they can at clubs. I think it's critical and vital that you've got good, strong coach development at all levels. So from that point of view, you're looking at making sure that better coaches, better kids, better schools, better clubs, better pathway, better national teams. It's not rocket science, is it? It's like chucking a stone in the water and seeing the 7 stages of a ripple effect.
Yeah,
do that
and seeing it grow. And I think, it is really important, the monetary side of it, and unfortunately not every, more on the emerging nations, well, possibly some of the bigger nations if they're badly run. But the emergent, that's really difficult, isn't it? So would you say for the kids in particular, make it fun, make it engaging, make it interesting? I think great programs. I mean, there's plenty to pick off the internet. The CREO program that ICC run, and there's various other things that you can pick off the internet to have good fun, and then obviously having some domestic competitions for those kids to play in. I think it's important in this current day and age, given the cultural diversity of all of our countries and the South Asian influence that we have across Europe, is that we have the traditional format of club cricket that most countries have got, but also there is an opportunity for informal cricket, and by that I mean street cricket, tape ball cricket. In other words, a variety of offers, not just the old school. Well, this is how we run leagues in the UK under the Imperial Cricket Council. Therefore, we can bring that over here. I think we've got to think more laterally as cricket boards across Europe to formalise informal cricket rather than seeing as the naughty little sister that keeps biting your legs from time to time. They play some tape ball cricket on a car park, but it's nothing to do with us. No, that fundamentally has to change and has to be accepted as a fantastic form of the game. And going back to Estonia, a lot of the lads that we've inherited into the team, their only cricketing knowledge, Kev, came to start through tape ball cricket, and slowly but surely we've moulded them and shaped them into what you see today. The other tenet to this is probably the women's and girls game. I think critical that is high on the agenda of every board meeting and every board member's mind. That they have got an opportunity and a real bespoke playing offer to make sure that because that's where you can see most growth, most fastest, and with longevity as well. Yeah, and I think that's really important now that the women's game is embraced as the same as the men's game. It's not separate anymore. It's a game of cricket, and you're either a male playing it or a female playing it.
And I think allied to that, if you've got all those things in place, if you can top it off with a good league structure, a variety of playing offers, some T10, T20, some informal cricket in the women's game, can you have some softball cricket and some softball festivals, which are not, cutthroat cricket, but an opportunity for women to enjoy themselves and girls to get into the game. And then probably the last bit for me was making sure that your national team ambassadors are on message. So when they are in country or out of country, they're constantly doing everything they can to promote the sport and the game that they love. And a classic example of one of the things I really loved, I did a presentation to the board of Estonian cricket the other week, and I listed Sahil Chauhan's unbelievable world record, with something like 22 world records that he broke that day. But I got some pictures placed on the PowerPoint slide as well while I was presenting, and I said to them, what's the most significant part of this slide? And they looked at it and they said, well, actually the bottom left-hand corner. I said, yeah, well done. And the bottom left-hand corner was a photo of the players signing autographs of young Estonian kids who are in an international school in Spain and talking to them in Estonian about the game of cricket and the opportunities and what this tournament was all about. Not Sahil Chauhan, much as it was a fantastic, unbelievable display of cricket that he did and will live in people's memory forever. The bottom left-hand corner was the one that needs to keep resonating with countries. And that's how important your national team players are in selling the game.
Yeah, 100%. And we've got Sahil coming on in a couple of weeks' time, so I'm really looking forward to that. And, you know, you've mentioned about tape ball cricket and how they've developed, you know, some of those individuals from a cultural difference. Obviously, artificial wickets, but that's still an improvement. We've talked about the evolution of the game, I suppose, really across the different formats. It even leading to talk about evolution of the game. If I'm correct, the T10 now, is it? Even in the Olympics in 2024. Who would have thought cricket would have been in the Olympics, you know, all those years ago? But when we talk about the evolution of the game, and it must have changed massively for you over the years. I go back to me playing as a child. You know, I didn't have Xboxes, I didn't have PlayStations. I think I was lucky if I got a bike by the age I was 12. I found out the other week on a podcast we didn't even have internet when I started. That's how long ago. But how do you see and the benefits, how it's changed, you know, evolved over the years from your minor counties to the current 100? What's the benefits of all this evolution?
The benefits of it, I think, are keeping people in the game for longer. That's the first thing. Going with the flow of reading the room, making sure that you've got a product that people want to watch and be part of. And by and large, most of the countries in Europe now seem to be able to do that. So I think before, and going through my early years, we just continued to do what we'd done in the past. Now there's a lot more data and information on readership, viewers, investment into the game, which is able to shape a good cricketing product for most of these countries. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you must have seen it evolve in so many ways, really, with all the experiences that you've had. And do you think it's easy to, you know, do all these evolvements and improvements and analytics, etc., but still stay true to the traditions while embracing that innovation? Because, you know, cricket's got a lot of traditions I'd love to see stay there, or am I just old hat?
Yeah, I still think Test cricket will be the holy grail. What it will look like, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a point in time where we go to two divisions. You know, you've only got to watch some of the coverage recently. There's not a lot of people watching cricket in some of these overseas nations, which is a little bit of a worry. A lot of them rely on England travelling
the Barmy Army.
Yeah, because of the money that it brings into there. And obviously we've seen the emergence of the IPL. Listen, and it's been unbelievably successful. Success tends to have 1,000 fathers, and failure is an orphan. And we're about to find out whether the 100 is an orphan. We won't know probably until the middle of next year and possibly beyond. But what we know is that the IPL has provided unstinted progress because of its longevity. I think, you know, it's 15 years now. It's cricketainment, as they call it. The orphan, the 100 remains an orphan for me. Until we get, particularly in the men's game, the stellar cricketers from around the world playing. I don't think a male Indian cricketer, Test cricketer, or international cricketer has played in the 100 yet. That will be, you know, a marker. Once we get that, it's being repositioned at the moment.
Yeah, is every time, yeah,
because it hasn't really established itself for one reason.
That's what I was saying earlier. I don't know. It hasn't quite grabbed me yet. It hasn't quite.
We'll see how it plays out, I guess.
Yeah, which is the only way, really, I suppose. Yeah. But I think that tradition versus innovation, I suppose, is key. You've got, you know, again, you can't stay in the old days. You can't. No. You know, I can't remember. It might have been Jeff Boycott going back in the day, and I'm not using him as a forward-thinking guy, but, you know, absolutely dismissing T20 cricket and etc. as being the death of the game. But actually, it probably saved the game. And then you go back to Kerry Packer and coloured clothing, and everybody's like, well, you can't do this, you can't do this. You know, cricket is for white. So some traditions should disappear, but it's balancing that tradition against innovation and making it adaptable across the way. Look, we're coming towards the end, Richard, I'm sorry to say, because I could talk. I find you very intriguing, I find you very interesting, and I think there's lots we've still not covered in this short space of time. But I'm going to finish with a couple of questions to you, if I may then, and it puts you on the spot, potentially. But
give it a go.
So the first one, what's been the most rewarding part of working with emerging cricket nations, given that you've worked with nearly half in Europe?
Yeah. What's been the most rewarding? The desire from the players to treat their opportunities as one-offs rather than taking it for granted. They don't ever take anything for granted, which I think is fantastic. Their hard work and the sacrifices they make, they just amaze me. They really do. Those would be the things, really, is that... Is that rewarding, though, Richard, because you've seen that change? Because I'm no expert on this, but I would think, and I'll use Estonia as an example, when you came here, which I think was 2 years ago now, that wouldn't have been true. No. We've changed the environment incredibly, and the 2 years ago there was a slightly different group of players, but they weren't what you would call a true team. I don't know whether it was because they hadn't had enough time to gel with me or with each other, but a combination of circumstances meant that we didn't do very well in the World Cup qualifiers 2 years ago. Fast forward 2 years, they've had time. They've had a captain's opportunity to settle in Arslan Amjad, who's been brilliant. Support team around him of Stuart Hook and Stefan Gooch more recently. And they've played a lot of cricket together, and inevitably you grow closer and closer, providing that you've got the right environment, and that's all we've tried to provide for them, really.
Yeah, and I think you definitely have created that right environment, but you can create the environment, but it's up to the player then to engage with it and go with it, and I think that's clearly happened also. And I was, as you know, I was in Finland 2 years ago, and I wasn't in Guernsey this year, but I did watch all the streaming, and it is chalk and cheese, not necessarily in their a talent. I think some of that talent was there in Finland, but their approach, their mentality, their teamwork, their game management, etc., has been a huge increase, and I think that's largely in part to a lot of the work you've done. So I'll finish with one more question then, if I may, and if that's okay with you. So, is there, over the years, and there's been many, I think you said 1989 you started on this journey of sort of cricket administration, and then through the Netherlands, emerging cricket, your Blind Summit coaching, your Shropshire, your Warwickshire, your Hertfordshire, lots and lots to talk about, and as I say, I think we've only scratched the surface. Very difficult question, I would assume, but is there a particular moment or achievement that stands out to you over those 34, 5, 6 years?
Oh, blimey.
Sorry.
Particular moment or achievement? Wow, there's quite a few, Kev, to be honest. But
okay, top three. Can you do top three?
Top three, I suppose. Most recently, having the privilege of watching Sahil and his T20 world record. That was, individual brilliance at its best would be, unbelievable. I was very privileged to see Brian Lara's 501, which took 5 sessions.
Yeah.
So he'll seem to take 50 minutes or probably less, actually. I would say that that's probably one of the great ones. The second probably would be seeing youngsters gain professional playing contracts, and I was privileged to see that at Warwickshire. So walking them over the car park from the indoor cricket centre and then quizzically asking, where are we going, sir? And we're going to see whoever the director of cricket might have been. Why is that, sir? We're going to have a chat with him about your future. And eyes wide open, knowing that we'd already prearranged for the parent to be there.
Okay, yeah.
Why is my dad here?
So more nerves than anything. What have I done wrong?
We'll find out in a minute. And seeing that, adulation and proud moment for the whole family. And the third thing I think I'm most proud of is my family, because I'm away a lot, as you well know. And without them, their support, I'm very fortunate to have somebody who played international cricket herself, and so she understands the game back to front, and will often ring me and tell me what I'm doing right and wrong, or the players are doing right and wrong, or what I need to do next. But I have an incredibly supportive family, 2 boys, and they stand out for me as an achievement in my personal life, because without their support and their backing, none of what I've talked about today would ever have been possible.
Perfect way to finish, Richard. I think families are very important in everything that we do, and support and the people around you that drive you. There's been down times, no doubt, but it's the support from others that help. So It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Bats, Balls and Banter, Richard. And I think your journey through the cricketing world, from your administration to your coaching, and what is clear is your passion for growing the game, at home and internationally, is inspiring. So thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with us today, and we wish you nothing but continued success.
Thank you very much.
Future products. Thanks again, Richard. Much appreciated.
It's been an honour. Thank you very much indeed.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
This podcast series is sponsored by Cricket Finder, the world's fastest growing cricket networking platform, bringing clubs, teams and players together from all over the world. Use the code POD24 to receive your subscription discount at cricketfinder.com. So thank you all for tuning in to Bats, Balls and Banter. And don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more exciting episodes. Until next time, take care and keep the cricket spirit alive.